It was, okay, like be in this mold of the sexy person that they want. And I just never stopped to be like, hey, how is this affecting me?
Welcome back to another episode of Girls Gotta Eat.
Welcome back.
I saw that you just opened the weather app on
Oh my God. That is so embarrassing.
Somebody wrote and said I missed the weather updates, and I thought you were getting ready to spit some weather updates.
Somebody wrote, yeah, bitch, I saw it. It's in our joint email. That's why I opened the weather app. Why do you're putting me on blast so hard right now?
You know, my favorite thing is when you ask me if I saw an email. Like, I don't spend 24 hours a day in our, you're like, you see this email? Yeah, actually, I spend 24 hours a day reading our emails. I don't have time to do anything besides that.
Sometimes I'll be in our email on my laptop and it comes in like in real time, and I do see it before you. It's once a quarter. But listen,
after 1 o'clock,
someone did. If you email at 3 a.m., it's coming straight to me.
Sometimes I will wake up and see that you responded at 2 a.m. to somebody.
But someone, said they missed the weather updates. I just can't believe you called me out like that. I don't know, guys. March is unpredictable.
Hot take.
So that's so funny because Francis, his birthday just passed, but he was like, I want to have a birthday party and I want to do either April 3rd or April 10th. And I said, you can't do the 10th. Rayna and I have a wedding. And I said, we'll be there the 3rd. It's the 3rd, right? Mm-hmm. And he was like, oh man, I kind of wanted to do it later. So just a better chance that the weather will be warmer. And I was like, listen, with April weather, there's no guarantees. The only guarantee is that Rayna and I will not be there on the 10th.
I like that you RSVP for us as a couple.
Well, I just know that we are top tier guests.
Every time you say top tier friends,
it's just funny when someone's like, hey, I'm thinking of doing this thing on this date or this date. And if I can't make one of those dates and I really want to come, I'm going to like really push. Mm-hmm. Like some people will be like, if I can't make it, it's no big deal. I'm like, no, we're going to go with this date. I know it's your birthday.
But you push holidays and birthdays. You're like, I read the weather almanac for the last 100 years.
I feel like I threw him some shade. I'm like, I mean, you could do it the 10th, but
it won't be fun.
Okay, so I just realized that last week I also brought up Francis because it was like his birthday and my mom. Mm-hmm. The birthday's like one day apart, 26th and 27th. That being said, it just jogged my memory that the 27th, so just days ago, Cindy Hesseltine turned 69.
Get out of here.
Yes, it's her 69.
I didn't text her at her birthday. God damn it.
Rayna, it won't be.
Damn it. Just leave this in.
It's still, we're recording.
You know what, listen, you are so lucky that your parents think that's funny because my mom and my stepdad are 69 and it's been a whole year of me not being able to make these jokes. I texted my brother, I'm like, do you think that they're going to think this is funny? And he was like, Ryan, get out of here.
I know. Well,
it's so lucky.
Yeah. My parents are like 1 year apart. So my mom will turn 69 or she just turned 69 and then my dad will be 70 in July. So that's a big one.
Your dad didn't let me make a 69 joke. That's true. Thank God for your dad.
Yeah. But it was also like, it was a pandemic,
Can't throw any lip parties.
We didn't have a big party, but Lee's 60th was, I showed you the cake. Like we went all out. We had it in Dewey and it was like,
you wore a sundress.
Yeah. A bubble dress.
I still remember it.
A bubble. We used to wear bubble clothing.
Actually, I used to wear bubble clothing with polka dots from Wet Seal. That was all I wore for years.
It's so insane. Like all you want to do is like be slimming and flattering. And we would wear stuff that was a bubble.
And by the way, I have double D titties. So it's even bigger on somebody that just has a tent hanging off of their body. It's like, take this lumpy bag that's shapeless and make it worse.
It's so bad. I can't even.
How did I get fucked those 10 years ago?
That was
out here sleeping with me. I mean, you saw what my eyebrows looked like back then. It is wild.
Same girl.
Okay, so before we get into it, just a couple of housekeeping things. We have some shows coming up.
Yay!
Live shows.
I don't know why I didn't make the noise.
I know. I was like, wow, that really fell flat.
I was like, yay.
Guys, it's raining out.
Yeah.
I'll tell you where it's not raining, Florida.
And we have shows there in May. We're so excited. You guys know this is like, we have not been on the road since last year. So it's like our big coming out, coming back out on the road.
It's like our Sweet 16.
I know. So we have Miami on Sunday, May 2nd, 2 shows. Tampa, May 5th, 2 shows, and Orlando, Thursday, May 6th. Again, 2 shows every single night. There's going to be an early show, a late show. They're both going to be popping. The tickets are going fast. I think there's one show in Miami that may have sold out. And so we want you guys to like get on these and scoop them up while they're still available. We can't wait. So much fun stuff planned.
Yeah, we're going to take shots out of each other's titties. Well, you can take a shot out of my titties. I can't take a shot out of yours. As always, you guys can get tickets and everything at girlsgotteatpodcast.com. If you're a newer listener, we have everything on there for you. All the past episodes, if you want to search through. Great merch. We're going to do some new merch for the springtime. And of course, all the live shows and everything is there. You can stay up to date with everything from our newsletter. You'll sign up on the website, girlsgotteatpodcast.com.
All right. Okay, so you had something to tell me.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to tell you this. And I promised our audience that I was only dating divorced guys, which I have delivered on. And we got a lot of messages from girls being like, yeah, girl, like go fuck divorced guys. They're amazing.
I know. And people did validate me on that, like being the first person post-divorce and it not working out.
Mm-hmm.
Like this girl kind of sent me this sob story on how it didn't work out for her. And I was like, I'm so sorry, but thanks for validating me as well.
Yeah. Well, actually, what's important is that you were right.
I did not write that back. Can you imagine? She writes this thing. I'm like, what's important here is I was right. No, but she was like, it's so true. Like, she was like, I wish I would have known. Cause she was like, I felt that kind of, you have a feeling of like, is this person just kind of going so hard on me because they're rebounding?
But one of our girlfriends is dating somebody who's recently divorced and he is just living out all of his sexual fantasies on her that he didn't get to do in the divorce. The other day, I gotta tell you, I told her I was gonna say this on the podcast, whatever.
Oh, you did? Okay.
He's like living out all these like crazy sexual fantasies. She's so sweet. And like, I don't think of her as like a real sexual deviant. And she told me the other day that this guy wrapped his phone in cellophane and then videotaped himself jerking off so he could come at the phone.
That is wild.
That's what we're dealing with divorce guys.
Well, and I said to you, I would think that there is no more sexually frustrated person, male or female, than someone that's in a sexless marriage. Mm-hmm. If you're not cheating, if you're staying faithful and you're with a partner that you're married to and you're not having sex, like there's nothing that feels probably more lonely, sexually frustrated, isolating than that. So when you get out of that situation, you're coming at your phone.
You're coming on your phone. And yesterday morning, she was like, do you want to see like what we were sexting about? She's just sending me pages of his sex. I can never meet this guy. I'm going to meet him. I'm going to have one sip of alcohol. I'm going to be like, don't say it. Don't say it. I've seen your dick.
And I've seen you come out of it towards an iPhone.
Actually, I did not watch the cellophane cum video. I can't listen. Not anybody else besides my man. I can't watch that.
I love it.
I
honestly
love it.
I love that to that whole process. That guy should have made like a TikTok. Here's how to come on your phone. And he's like wrapping his phone up like that. It's such a little cute arts and crafts project that this guy's wrapping his phone up in plastic wrap so he can jerk off over it and come on it. It's hysterical.
She was like so proud. This is like a dad. She was like so proud. She's like, he's so smart and innovative. He's like an engineer because he thought of that.
Because kids. It's like it's a school project.
Listen, guys, I hope you love these ideas. I hope you do them with your partners.
I hope they make it.
I do too.
She is the first one post-divorce, so I hope that they're the exception to the rule. I think about it all the time.
Mm-hmm. I think about it all the time. So the people that I have been seeing have both I've been seeing. I'm not dating anybody, but I am about a year out from the divorce with most of the people that most so funny.
You have this like stable of men.
No, I'm actually like, consistently talking to one divorced guy who I actually like a lot. But
I'm super on board with it.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
I just have a good vibe about it.
I do too. I hope he never does anything terrible. But I did go on a date and a listener saw me there and I'm very excited to read his email because I never read it to you.
Okay.
This was a divorced guy, which this is what I do.
Right.
It's not somebody I'm like serious. It's actually like a friend of mine that like I used to date when we were like in college. And so we went out one night because he's hot.
Because he's single now.
Yeah. Mostly because I was just hoping we could like snap a pic for his ex-wife in bed together because I hate her.
I've met her. Cosign.
Yeah. Thank you.
Oof.
Oh, yuck. Just she's yucky on the inside. This isn't like a body shaming thing.
No, she's cute.
She's pretty.
Yeah.
Okay. So this girl writes me an email. So I got spotted by a fan. This is pretty crazy. Like you and I get seen in New York a lot because a lot of our audience is in New York. I was out of town at a dive bar in the middle of nowhere. Yeah. I don't know how somebody saw me.
Yeah.
So him and I were like alone. We're hanging out, whatever. We go on this date. The next morning I get an email from somebody. It is 7:39 in the morning. disgusting. This girl woke up and wrote this email the minute she woke up. The subject line is a Rayna sighting. The message starts with Tuesday, March 2021.
Oh my God.
My boyfriend and I at our local sports bar that we frequently regular. We sat down and within 5 minutes, he says, babe, isn't that Rayna? I looked to my left and lo and behold, it's Rayna Greenberg sitting there with a great looking guy. Whether you were on a date, probably not. I read that and I was like, bitch, what? They're his friends most likely. As much as I wanted to say hi, because we love you and the podcast, we even saw your show, we couldn't help but stare over every once in a while that you guys were drinking, and eventually you couldn't keep your hands off of each other.
Oh my God, they watched the whole thing.
There was a lot of making out.
No! This is, can you imagine being like a fan of someone and you watch this happen?
I had like 8 tequilas, Ashley. I was so drunk. I mean, I wasn't like falling down. They were this very small drinks, but we were there for like 4 hours. Okay. And this did not look like a friendship date. We were all over each other.
Yeah.
When she said maybe a date, maybe I was like, maybe not a date. I was like, bitch, what? Do you have eyes?
Yeah.
Like we have never had a platonic minute with each other in our whole lives, me and this guy. There was a lot of making out. Either way, we were excited to see you and want to say hi, but at the same time, respect you being out. I even almost followed you into the bathroom, but then I refrained to you. We love you. Hope you had a great trip.
That is what a treat for her to see you in action. Like to see, like we talk about dating, and sex and making out, and she saw you in the wild doing it.
I mean, she listens to me for dating advice. It's like going and watching A-Rod play on the baseball field.
Seeing Beyonce do karaoke.
And I'm happy to report that guy's so hot. Like if anybody was going to see me on a date with somebody, I would hope it would be him.
Yeah. And if that were me, if I were you, I would have loved the bathroom follow in. Like, you know me, I'm all about like making friends in the bathroom.
Me too. If she was like, girl, I listen to your podcast, that guy's hot as shit.
I know,
I'd be like, I know
girl.
And it's funny because I said to him, because we were in the most random dive bar in the middle of nowhere. And he was like, do people like recognize you at bars all the time? I was like, yeah, but who the fuck is going to see me here?
Yeah.
Like we talked about it.
Yeah. I love that she probably got a little drunk too, you know, if they were there for 4 hours too, as they watched you guys like fuck at the table. And then she got home and she was probably like tried to write that email and she was like trying to keep one eye open. She was like seen double. And so she woke up at 7 a.m. and would like bang that email out.
7 a.m. I could not wait to tell you. It was the first thing I opened my eyes and saw.
That is amazing.
Oh, I'm so glad I got to. It feels like, you guys, when I hold something back from Ashley, it like kills me. So like when I tell her it's like giving birth, it feels so good.
Well, I have a funny story for you that I haven't told you. So this happened, this is like a week or two ago at this point. I've been occasionally using a driver. This isn't like I'm not fucking flying private. It's the same price as like an Uber SUV, but it's a private driver and it's wonderful. And it's like, I feel like I get to kind of support this man's small business rather than giving my money to Uber or Lyft. And it's great. You know, we've used him a couple times. Like if I'm going somewhere that's kind of farther away and I want to have a nice comfy car and I can work in the back of it, I've been using this driver. Rob uses him. He's incredible. He's amazing. So I was in the car with him and we're just kind of like getting to know each other. Like we were talking, he is from Indonesia. He's from Jakarta. He was just telling me his whole story. Like he came here without his wife and kids, and then they were able to come here 4 years later. He's been in the States for 10 years. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so glad like your family finally got to come over here and you're, you know, making it. And then he goes, you know, are you single, Ashley? And I was like, I'm single. Yeah, I'm single. And he was like, Ashley, you need to get a boyfriend. And I was like, yeah, I've been trying.
What? Describe the tone. Was the tone as though you weren't aware?
Like he was like, his tone was literally like, you should try this thing out.
Yeah, that's what I want to know. Like, was he like, you know, you should try carbon neutral fuels? And you were like, I never thought of doing that.
Yeah, it's like, oh really, Gondo? I hadn't been trying.
Like there was this, like you had this problem and there was no solution for it. He was like, I have this
like
idea.
I busted out laughing. Like I feel like that moment really bonded us, of him being like, oh, Ashley, you should get a boyfriend.
Did you tell him how old you are?
I mean, I think
he was like, you're too old to be single. It's gross.
No, he was just like, you know, he was probably like, she's cool. And he probably thinks I'm like attractive enough. You know, I think he was just like, oh, you should look into this.
Hot take. Thank you so much.
I like lost it. I was like, yeah, no, I'm trying.
it's such a generational thing. My landlord in my last building said that to me too. She's like, how old are you again? And I was like 30, because this is, 100 years ago. Yeah. And I was like, and she was like, and you're still single? And I was like, uh-huh. And she was like, you really got to get on it.
Yeah, like,
I was like,
it's so funny because I feel like I felt it coming. Like, I feel like as soon as I was like, I said that I'm single, I like knew that's what he was going to say. And I'm 0% offended. Like, that shit is so funny to me.
Oh,
like,
it's so funny.
I don't care.
If somebody my own age said that to me, I'd be like, take a hike. That is so funny.
Anyway, just me and my driver.
You guys are bonded. He's like, Ashley, boyfriends, have you ever heard of them?
And also, by the way, that's just like 6 a.m. Like, whatever. It's not important.
But you're not ready to get hit with that. Right. When they hit you with this shit in the morning.
I hadn't even had coffee. I was like, okay, you know what? It's a little early.
That's how I felt about this email. And she was like, were you on a date? Probably not. And I was like, bitch, what?
I almost kind of like that she initially thought that it wasn't a date. And then she saw you over there like sucking face.
Yeah, we were there for 4 hours, 3 hours and 45 minutes of it was just making out. I don't even know if we talked much.
Okay. Those are our stories. And you guys, if you saw the episode description, you know what we're discussing today, a little bit heavier topic, but we are glad to be able to do it and share your stories and also bring on our dear friend, Amy Chan. And we are going to get into that. We kind of just wanted to like knock this lighter stuff out of the way first. And we do have some recommendations. So do you have 3?
I have 3. We have a heavy recommendation list this week.
Yeah. So you have 3. It's funny because you have 3 all the same and I have 3 kind of like all the same in the same category. So do you want to kick it off?
Yeah, well, mine are more serious and yours are more like light and fun. Yeah. So I'll do the more serious stuff and then you can like bring people back to like happiness. No, I had a long week of documentaries. Actually, I have a 4th recommendation.
Oh God.
Okay, the first one, really quick. Nate Bargatze has a new special on Netflix. He is one of our favorite. The Tennessee Kid was one of my favorite specials ever.
Same.
He has a new special on Netflix, so check that out. You guys will laugh so hard. He's fantastic. The Last Blockbuster is a documentary also on Netflix about the last Blockbuster. It's in Bend, Oregon. It's about the managers just trying to keep it alive. It's so nostalgic. It brought me back to like being a kid. We went every Friday night. You spend like an hour in Blockbuster. I remember the smell.
Oh my gosh.
It was nice. It was nice to share that with my mom. If you guys want to read that, if you guys want to watch that, or you can also read The History of Netflix, which is called This Will Never Work.
I told you that there was a meme because Netflix made this documentary about Blockbuster dying essentially, and the meme was like, imagine making a documentary about the person you killed. I said to my brother, we got such a good laugh.
They address it in the documentary and about how like Netflix didn't actually put them out of business, and also
of course that's just like that's a very like kind of
hysterical
light joke. Yes. Like, yes, like technically no, just like if you really look into it, same thing with Ubers and the cab system, like there's more to it.
Yes.
I just remember, so this is like only people I feel like in like my hometown would know this. We were not even a Blockbuster family. We did a place called Video Scene. It was more of like a smaller franchise. Mm-hmm. My parents were like against what, I don't know, like big movie, big rental.
Yeah.
But when I would go with a friend to Blockbuster, it was bigger, it was better, it was brighter, it was more of a scene in there. Because I was like, I mean, Video Scene, they did have a ball pit for a minute. So that was like a lit Friday night. But I remember even going to Blockbuster with like the first night, like this guy ever went to second base with me. Like the first time someone ever felt my boobs, like
outside of a Blockbuster or after a Blockbuster?
Like we went to get a movie. Like we'd already made out like on a date. We'd already like went on a couple dates, but like this was the first time we rented a movie and went back to his house and his parents weren't home. And like he touched my boobs and it was just like, I just remember that night being like, oh my gosh, like we're renting a movie. We're going to like go watch it and like hook up. Like the moments that like, the nostalgia, you know, I'd like love nostalgia more than anything.
I did when they talked about the smell, it really hit me. And then like texting my mom about it and being like, do you remember the snack tray? You'd bring me an Arlen in the basement, like fill it with snacks. And then people travel to it. It's like a tourist destination.
Oregon has some crazy shit. Like that's where the Goonies were filmed. Like they have some like really just cool nostalgic like landmarks.
Ashley and I are Oregon stans. We love Portland so much.
I miss you every day.
Okay, so my next one is Operation Varsity Blues, also on Netflix. It's a deep dive into basically the fraudulent methods of this guy, Rick Singer, to get kids of rich and famous people into colleges. You guys probably know this because Lori Loughlin and Felicity Huffman were prosecuted for this. They're trying to get their kids into schools and just I really like that they focus on all the ways that rich people sort of like throw their money around and how people with money just obviously have access to more things and to gaming the system and to gaming standardized testing and things like that. I thought it was really interesting. It's a dramatization, but they take all the transcripts of all the phone calls that he had with all these parents, and that's the script for the movie, which I thought was really well done.
So you posted on Instagram that it was one of the best dramatizations you've seen, and
Maybe
I have to agree. So I watched this with my parents. I was with my parents last week, and we watched it as family after you recommended it, and it took me a minute to even realize it was a dramatization. I was like, wait, how was this filmed? It feels really real because you and I really didn't love the dramatization aspect of the social dilemma. Oof. It felt really weird and forced, and like the aliens, and it was just weird.
So you guys will love that. That's just one maybe like hour and a half documentary, and the last one is Alan versus Pharaoh. It's a 4-part miniseries on HBO. It shook me to my core. I think I didn't really know a lot about Woody Allen growing up, other than that he like married his stepdaughter. But the relationship with him and Mia Farrow is this like 12-year-long, really interesting situation. He molested their 7-year-old daughter, and it's about like that case essentially. I don't think this was like highly publicized when we were kids, or maybe the narrative was just like Mia Farrow's this crazy person, and Woody Allen, like all he wants to do is like protect his kids. He ended up taking her to court trying to sue for custody of the kids. It's highly documented that he did these things by babysitters, family friends, psychiatrists. There's dozens of people on record saying that he did abuse her, and he was never really prosecuted for it, and he didn't really pay any penalties for it. And then he married her daughter, different daughter.
Yeah.
So it's hard to watch, but I think important. I was talking to my mom about this, and my mom was like, well, Mia Farrow was a crazy person. I was like, but I don't think that you like even knew. It wasn't publicized. And all these people corroborated that this is just like a powerful white man that got away with murder, basically.
I mean, look at the track record of Harvey Weinstein and Roger Ailes. It's like, we've come so far. I mean, we talk about this all the time. It's like there was no taking down those powerful white men back then in the 80s, 90s, whatever. Like, thank God we're doing it today. But that wasn't a thing that could happen.
Even a few years ago, like people knew that Woody Allen did this. Like this was like highly publicized. So all these actresses and actors have come forward and have donated their salaries from the movies they've done with him.
Oh, okay.
And have like renounced him and won't do movies with him anymore. But I don't know, even up until like a couple of years ago, all of these like pretty modern actresses were still doing movies with him. So it's like, you knew. So check it out. All 3 of them, plus the Nate Bargatze special, really fantastic.
Okay. I have 3 teen movies or shows. So I just love that these are all in the same category. Teen content. You guys know I love stuff about high school. The thing that I love about all of these, we are just seeing, this is not a hot take, so much more inclusivity. Like you look at Mean Girls, of course, still love Mean Girls, but it's all white. And there's a lot of stereotypes and, teen movies of the past. We're just growing as a society. It's beautiful to see, but it's really great to see the shows about kids and teens, like showing so much more diversity. So I just love that. The first one is Moxie. It's a movie on Netflix. It's directed by Amy Poehler, and she also acts in it. It's about this teenage girl. She like notices the sexism in her school, and she just kind of takes it on and kind of leads this revolution in the school. There's just like so much girl power. The whole vibe is like fuck the patriarchy, and it's really inclusive with the girls that are in the movie. It tackles toxic masculinity, harassment. It even does tackle rape, but at the end of the day, it's just like ultimately like super uplifting. I was like crying the whole time. I loved every minute of it. And then there's the To All the Boys trilogy that's on Netflix. And these are based on books by an author named Jenny Han. You guys probably know this. There's To All the Boys I've Loved Before is the first one. And then the 2 sequels are To All the Boys, P.S. I Still Love You, and To All the Boys Always and Forever. I still haven't watched Always and Forever, but I've watched the first 2 and I just love them. It's about this teenage girl. She is an Asian American girl. Her dad is white, and he is Aiden from Sex and the City. And her mom is actually passed, but she writes these love letters to these guys, and they accidentally get sent out. And then it's like kind of what happens. Like I won't spill the whole details, and it's like her journey. And the first 2 movies are in high school, and I think she goes to college in the third one. But the ultimate vibe to me is like very like make your move, shoot your shot. Like she kind of wrote these secret letters that worked out in her favor because she kind of thought these boys would never like her, and it turns out that they did. So it's just, I love that whole message. And I just love those movies, and I can't recommend them enough. They're just like feel good. And then the third one is Ginny and Georgia.
Ever heard of it?
Ever heard of it? So many of you guys DM me about this, like to watch it. Yes, I know about the Taylor Swift thing. Don't DM me. But I mean, it didn't hold me back from watching it. So I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Same.
So I loved it. The main character is this biracial teenager, and it's about her life with her crazy mom, who's kind of like always, they've moved around a lot, and it's like her going to high school and trying to fit in. And this, I also think, addresses like a lot of important topics: race, sex, homosexuality. being a child of this like quote unquote broken, like chaotic family. The characters are flawed. Like it's not like a Gilmore Girls. It's not like I never watched Gilmore Girls, but like I feel like it was a little like
we were
everything's happy.
Gossip Girls, man.
We were Gossip Girls. Gigi means Gossip Girls for us. But like there's like some darker stuff. It's a little darker. There's some like murder. Like it's good.
Ooh, murder. Okay, I'm in.
And I loved it. And I watched it with my mom. We both loved it. I think it's, again, great just to show the inclusivity. And I just love how these teen movies are evolving. And we are talking about women of color today, and we are focusing on Asian women. And I think that just how Asian people in general are being portrayed in these movies is so important. So for one, the lead actress in To All the Boys is an Asian girl. She's the protagonist, lead actress. And then in Ginny and Georgia and Moxie, the love interest is an Asian male. So I just think about this all the time. I think about this, what we talked to Brian Park, how like Asian men have never been seen as like, in the past, like the hot boyfriend, you know, they, in the past, like movies and media, and how we were saying Insecure was one of the first shows to really do that. So I'm always taking note of this stuff. And it's like, I mean, they're high schoolers. So just, you know, they're kids, but like, they're these like good looking, cool Asian dudes that are like desirable. And again, we did a whole episode on this with Brian Park, and you guys can look back. That was in the summer, but like, I just notice it because we come from a very white teen movie upbringing. You know what I mean?
100%. And I mean, I want to talk about it a little bit more like later in the episode, but just representations of minorities just in general on television. And when you look at like all these, especially like dating stuff, but like Real Housewives, it never even like occurred to me. There's no representation of anybody on television other than white people. They picked one franchise and they made them all black. And it's like, why is this not? They finally, they have one Asian person in the Dallas one now. Like it's slowly happening.
Yeah.
But it's nice to see it and think like, I didn't even think that deeply into it for so long, but now you see it and it's important, and that makes me happy.
Well, it's important for the kids and teenagers to see characters who look like them on TV. I'm thinking of Mindy Kaling's show, Never Have I Ever. The lead is an Indian American teenage girl, and all shows like this. There's just a lot more. And so we obviously love to see it.
And I look forward to a time, and that will be this generation's growing up, where like it's so normal that they wouldn't even think it's revolutionary. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yes.
To me, I see this and I'm like, this is so great and important, but that generation will just think this is the norm. It will be like how I felt seeing like gay people on TV, because like when I first saw Will and Grace, and I was like, oh, like representations of homosexuals on television. Like I had never seen it. And now like no one would think twice. Of course, half the cast is gay in a lot of shows.
Right. Like in Moxie, like these two girls kiss and you're like, it's not a big deal.
Right.
You know what I mean?
It's not so revolutionary. So I look forward to a time where people don't even have to talk about how revolutionary this is.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I know. Like that's the thing. Like this should be the norm, but I also think it's nice to bring attention to like the evolution.
100%.
All right.
I'm sure you wrote something.
Should we start? Yeah. So just given what's going on in the world, I think we all have become aware that there's been a rise in anti-Asian violence and hate crimes, and the devastating shooting in Atlanta in which 8 people lost their lives, 6 of those people being Asian women. I don't even know. These things happen. I don't have the words. Like devastating isn't like enough of a word. You know what I mean? It's like horrifying. It's like disgusting. It like keeps me up at night. Like I'm not going to get into gun control today. We'll save that for another time. But that was kind of like the precipice of what had been happening, where people were getting beat up on the streets, like the elderly. Like I feel so sick about what's going on, that like anyone, not just Asian people, anyone like Black, brown, Asian would ever feel unsafe, or that their family or their friends were unsafe just simply because of the color of their skin, because of the way they look, that they couldn't walk around their neighborhood, that someone might jump them. You know, like it just, there's just so much like disgusting, like hate and white supremacy and misinformation and ignorance and colonialism in this country. And there always has been, but like it obviously was so emboldened by the former administration, and like a year of the president blaming the pandemic on China. Like, yeah, look what happened. And people like making jokes and playing into it. And it's just like, I hate it so much. Like, I feel so angry. I want to just channel that anger into like actionable things and, you know, posting on our platforms, talking about on this podcast, donating to different organizations and trying to help. This has just brought racism against Asians to the forefront of conversation, which of course is like much needed. And it's reminiscent of what we discussed with Fred Smith on our episode in June about racism more geared towards Black people, and how he said that these things happen and they get put on the world stage and people are sharing more of how they're feeling and how they've always felt when these things get brought to light. And I mean, it's always disgusting that people lose their lives or they get hurt for these conversations to happen, but it's important that we have them so change can happen and we can progress and move forward. And I mean, it goes out saying that there is so much good in the world. Like, I think we see that every day too, but obviously it just takes a few bad people to cause a lot of harm.
Yeah. And, you know, we are really honored to have a platform to talk about these things. Of course, we're going to talk about fetishization. That is
a tough one. Every time that word takes me, like, I have to take a deep breath.
Damn it. We're going to talk about fetishizing Asian women. We're going to use your words to tell your stories. Ashley and I can only do so much. We are white women. And, you know, I will say I didn't realize how big of a problem this was. And that's my white privilege, you know, that to have your head in the sand and not really realize how terrible things are for certain groups of people. And I grew up in the Northeast where I thought it was pretty accepting. I don't ever see anybody openly do anything terrible towards a minority. In New York City, you just wouldn't see it that often. But again, it's your privilege to not know those things as a white person. And I feel like the really important thing is it's being talked about, it's being brought to the forefront, that our listeners are emailing us, that we have guests that'll come on the show and talk about this. And I'm really honored to be able to uplift these voices and give them a platform, because these are really important conversations to have. And you have to check all these voices that are doing things like calling this the Kung flu. And these are minorities and small business owners that have suffered throughout this pandemic because of those words. And those words they're impactful and they're meaningful, and you have to fight those words.
Yeah. And to your point about kind of not knowing what's going on, is like, you really can live in a bubble that is New York City, where you don't, I mean, granted, there things are happening in Chinatown that we see now, but where you really don't see and hear these things, you know. I don't
surround myself with people that would say things
exactly.
like that. And, you know, my own experience that I can compare it to is, you know, I grew up Jewish and we are a minority, and I grew up in a Jewish neighborhood. All my friends were Jewish. I went to a Jewish school. My temple was the Tree of Life Temple, which was violently attacked years ago. And I didn't realize people hated Jews because everybody around me was a Jew.
Right.
And it was fun to be Jewish and it was cool to be Jewish. And even if I dated people that weren't Jewish, their parents would like poke fun at me for like cute stuff, but it felt like loving. It didn't feel like a microaggression. It felt like they wanted to learn about my culture. And I didn't realize that people hated Jews or didn't know Jews. And it was a cool thing to be Jewish where I grew up. So I also came from a family that never would have said a terrible thing about any minority. My parents are completely intolerant of any type of racism, especially spoken words of racism. I didn't grow up around anybody that would have said anything like that towards any minority. So it wasn't until I went to college in Indiana that I even met people that said, like, I've never met a Jew before.
Yeah.
I've never like been around Black people before. I didn't know that people were like that. Yeah. I just thought like everybody's tolerant of everyone because that's how I grew up.
Yeah. I love that you shared that. And when it comes to all this, you know, I think we're all learning. I'm constantly learning. You know, my personality is to be, you know, kind of loud and blunt, and I try to be funny and self-deprecating. And I'm also so interested and curious about other cultures, and just in general, I'm a person who always just wants to know everybody's story. You know, there was like a guy that I ended up dating, fucking, and the first thing I asked him that night was like, South Dakota, what's that about?
You otherized him,
but like that's just
you tokenized the guy from South Dakota,
a white guy that's you know, he lives in the United States. I just was like, I'm so curious about like people's story. I asked them so bluntly, so I have to be careful with being like, what's that about?
Okay, well, I was glad that I knew about this, because I ask you what's that about all the time now.
I think it turned him on. He felt like I roasted him about being from South Dakota. I don't know what that's about, but I know more now. But no, and this, I'm just joking. I just want to make Rayna laugh. Like, we're not comparing this to the stories we'll hear today. It's just, I'm kind of like, just, you know, reflecting on myself. And I think that's something that we should all do. And that's why it's so powerful and informative hearing these stories from our listeners that we're going to share. Like, I think that it's important that everybody kind of reflects on themselves too. And I wanted to share one sentence that one of the girls said. I know that lots of people out there have good intentions, but I guess what I mean is it's not necessarily what you say, but how you say it or your tone of voice when you ask about my heritage. And I think we're always learning. I think that I've said things, you probably said things even the past 3 years of this podcast that we wouldn't say today. Not anything crazy like a slur. You guys know that's not what we do, but just say things differently, more carefully today. So I just think ultimately that's the beauty of growth. Like we can look back on something we might have said years ago and like we wouldn't say that today because we have new information and like the world has changed and like people are growing and they're becoming better.
You're allowed to learn more information and grow and change. And, you know, we've talked a lot about cancel culture, so we don't need to get into that. But, you know, I think so much of the Black Lives Matter movement was about just learning how other people think and feel and actually learning and being better. And I do feel like I'm a better person today because of what I've read and learned. And, you know, recently I've spent a lot more time, especially in the last couple of weeks, especially researching dating apps and things like having ethnicity and race filters on dating apps and this discussion about whether they should remove them, and Grindr has removed them and Hinge has not, and certain they all have their different reasons for doing so. But there's a lot of discussion around racism and ethnicity on dating apps and should we be allowed to filter out. And something I love about dating apps is that it has allowed more people to have interracial relationships because you're not just shopping for a partner in your socioeconomic, racial, ethnic background of your neighborhood. It's allowing you to go on the internet, find people from everywhere. So the good part about that is that it has allowed people to connect with people outside of just their circle, which is great and it's beautiful. But, you know, if you read the stories from people about the racism that they experience as a minority on dating apps, it's pretty hard to read and it's disappointing. It's disheartening.
Yeah. And I didn't even think about that because I don't set those filters at all, but I guess it also lets women just filter out white men.
That's the argument for not getting rid of it. Like Bumble has gotten rid of it, Grindr. They're saying, you know, everybody should be allowed to. It's not just white people filtering out white people. But I mean, listen, they're private businesses. They're allowed to do anything they want. I personally felt like I learned a lot reading these articles. And there was an Asian man that they were interviewing in one of these articles, and he was talking about the racism that he finds on these apps, but that like, if I don't use them, I can't meet people. So he said, you know, I'm faced with this, would I rather be alone? And should I be alone, or should I go on these apps and face the racism that I feel that I face all the time on them? And people treating you like you're an
otherized.
Yes.
Yeah. And I feel for people that get on dating apps and deal with those scenarios all the time. And what we want to accomplish today is, you know, sharing these stories. I think there's power in a sense of community. So listeners may hear their story and be able to relate and feel seen and heard and validated, and also bring awareness to these types of situations, and for people that may not realize that they're happening. And ultimately, hearing other people's stories can create empathy, it can impact change. And the whole point of what we try to do is to, you know, educate. It's a comedy podcast. At the end of the day, guys, we talk about blowjobs and shit. But like when we tackle these topics, it's partially to obviously educate, but also make people feel seen and heard and validated. And we always want to treat these subjects with sensitivity and respect, and like choose our guests very carefully. And, you know, one person can't be an expert on all cultures and all the microaggressions and all the things that people say. So ultimately, what we wanted to do here was just use the words of our listeners and share their stories. And then we are going to bring on Amy Chan to share her story as well. But everybody has a different story. And we just were like, why don't we take the words and stories of our actual listeners, you know, and like, let's talk about it and let's unpack it and let's hear what they have to say.
And we just want to thank you all that sent us your stories. We are honored to be a safe space that you would send us and you would allow us to take your words and use them to talk about your experiences. So thank you all. And we're gonna get into your emails.
Yeah. Some of this stuff is painful to write, and it probably brings up some of these past experiences. So the fact that you guys like felt comfortable and safe emailing them like means a lot to us. We just can't thank you enough. Right up top, I mean, these were some things that came up a lot of just like with Asian women, lots of things about having yellow fever. Like, I can't even like say it. It's like hard to even say that that's like a thing that men could lead with. And people just constantly saying, where are you from? No, like, where are you really from? Saying things like, I've never been with an Asian, Indian, Latina before, things like that. One girl wrote, I can't tell you the amount of times guys use what are you as their opening line to meet me at bars and dating apps. So those are just some things that came up a lot. We're going to read some stories in full. Some I just pulled like something really important out of it. So we're just going to get into it.
Yeah. So our first email, a little bit of background information. I'm Puerto Rican. My skin color is medium to dark, and I have big curly hair. Here is some shit men say. I've never dated someone exotic. Don't call me exotic. I'm not an animal, Chad. So she quotes everyone and then says something after.
Yeah, like a clap back.
I've always wanted to fuck a black girl. I'm not here to help you check off one of your disgusting bucket list fantasies. You must know how to dance. I do, but I'm sure as hell not going to dance with you. You don't sound like a black girl, but you sound like a complete piece of shit.
Yeah, I love her clapbacks.
Let's go to a club so you could twerk on me. Sure, buy me a drink, and then I'll kick you in the balls. Is your hair real? And she wrote ... immediately blocked. The list goes on and on. It's sad and annoying that people still say stuff like this. I usually try to educate people when they say some type of comments like this, but to be quite honest, it gets tiring. Yeah, of course it does. It feels exhausting to be the central educator for all these people.
Yeah, and just it's frustrating that the overwhelming emotion I'm feeling from a lot of these women is like, I'm just tired of this. Like, it's not once, it's a lot. And I'm just fucking tired and I'm over it.
It sounds like it's so many guys that say the same things over and over and over again. It would make me not want to date. It would make me throw my hands up.
Yeah. Okay, I'll read the next one. She said, hi, I'm a 24-year-old Asian American woman, huge fan of the podcast. It's gotten me through a lot, yada, yada, part of my self-care. She's just a really sweet message to us. And then she said, I grew up in very white spaces, so I didn't realize how hard the current events would hit me. I finally have to address my internal and identity issues and have space to do so. With fetishization being such a factor in what happened in Atlanta and my recent experience of being fetishized, I am currently always on the verge of tears. I'll summarize her story. She goes on to share a story about a friend, or I think it was her sister's friend, trying to set her up with a coworker and really pushing it, even after she initially said no, which is problematic to begin with. Someone says no, it's a fucking no. But later came to find out that the coworker had an Asian fetish and that he had seen a picture of her and her sisters and literally like picked her out of the photo and was like, I want to date her, make it happen. And she just felt like he thinks Asian women are submissive, and she signed it sincerely, not submissive or silent. So the fetishization of Asian women in American culture is a huge problem. And I feel like it took something as awful and disgusting as like a shooting for people to be like, oh shit, could we have seen this coming? You know what I mean?
Yes, you could have. And one of our listeners, we shared her email earlier a couple weeks ago, and she said, I come from a culture that was just told to be quiet and fit in and not make noise, essentially.
Yeah.
It's a shame that this hasn't been brought to light until so much violence came. But I'm glad to share the stories. Our next email, she is Latinx, and she shared a story about her struggles of dating a white guy in college and having a racist professor. Being a woman of color in dating requires a lot of confidence. Looking back, if I wasn't always doubting myself for being the only Black Indigenous person of color in all of my classes, maybe comments like that wouldn't hurt so much. I vividly remember walking into my honors classes and just feeling like this look from all my white classmates and feeling so unwelcomed. One thing higher education and that shitty relationship taught me was that BIPOC people have to be excellent always, and white people don't have to show up the same. Brad's thesis was passed, and while we were dating, he was on an academic probation. My thesis was denied, and I graduated with a 3.9 GPA with automatic acceptance into a grad program on the same campus. Moral of the story, if you're a woman of color, I'm not saying your person is not white, but it's not going to be a good time if they can't see the struggles you face day to day and you are not well aware of their own privilege.
I think that's such a good call. Like, it's not that you can't date a white person, but it needs to be someone that like gets it. There's a woman on Instagram, her name's Genevieve Roth, and she is married to a Black man, and they have a biracial child. And she documents, well, I'll read it. Her Instagram bio says, sharing stories about the ways my whiteness has impacted my marriage and mothering. And it's really honest accounts and stories of her kind of realizing now that she couldn't see past her own whiteness to really understand and empathize with her husband even. And it's Genevieve J. Roth is the handle. And I find it really impactful, especially for an interracial relationship. And this listener's story reminded me of that. And we didn't share the whole story, but yeah, she was dating this white guy named Brad, obviously. And just like, he didn't get it. Like, she was like, this is racism. And he's like, I don't think so. Like that kind of stuff.
Right. You want to at least be with somebody that will hear you and hear out what your struggles are.
Yeah. Okay. We are just going to do a couple more. So she writes, I'm a 31-year-old woman from the Navajo Nation in New Mexico, because the Navajo Nation covers 3 states, and online dating can be such a mess. As soon as guys that I match with find out that I'm Native, it either goes 3 ways. Number 1, whoa, you're Native? That's so cool. Tell me about your people. I've never met a Native on here before, aka tokenized. 2, tries to act cool about it, but then it becomes apparent that our lived experiences are drastically different, and at this point it usually ends. 3, constant pressure to send sexy nudes and brings up Disney's Pocahontas narrative, the white guy and Native gal, and at this point just feels so sexualized that I'm no longer a woman with feelings, but this conquered quest of being able to sleep with someone so exotic.
I feel cringing just hearing this.
To further the obstacles of online dating, there's always the concerns of safety for anyone, more so with the missing murdered Indigenous women crisis across North America, also in Canada. The U.S. Department of Justice found that Native women face murder rates that are 10 times more than the national average. We have discussed that on this podcast before. So she just says that when I'm matching with a guy, like, I'm already cautious about where we meet, and there's like a fear coupled with the whatever it is, the tokenization, the fetishization. It's a lot. So she said, on a lighter note, I'm so glad to be a listener. I've learned so much about empowering myself and enjoying being single as fuck. But like, I just
imagine having to explain your experience to everybody. Like, and at some point, yes, we're all different. We come from different backgrounds. We have to explain where we come from. But imagine having to lead with that and explain, what your race is and where you came from. It's exhausting.
Yeah. And this guy's like this to me, ultimately, we wanted to share your experiences. And we also wanted to like let people know that really don't know that this happens to non-white women when they're just trying to date. And I don't really have the answers. And perhaps we do that like on another episode where we have someone come on we need to find this perfect person, but speak more on like how you respond. Mm-hmm. Or we can read the next one. She just says, get rid of them all. So I'll let you read this last one.
Okay. Do you want to read it? I mean, you went through all these.
Fine. I'll do this one. I'll close it out.
Guys, I don't read as well.
I love to read. I'm a good reader. Okay. She says, I saw the Insta story while dating as a woman of color. I identify as Asian American, and girl, things I have learned. 1, if they have anywhere in their profile they like anime, throw the whole man out. If they tell me that they love Asians, they're their favorite, throw the whole man out. If they follow a ton of Asian models on Instagram, like, live your truth, but it's sketch as fuck when all the women models they follow are Asian women, throw the whole man out. If they brag about being a fucking white belt in Taekwondo, you guessed it, throw the whole man out. She said, honestly, as an Asian woman, I've always had the fear of being fetishized while dating, but now with all the recent violence toward Asian women, I am really scared about what harm could come to me potentially, and I approach dating with even more extra care to make sure I don't put myself into situations that could be harmful to me. Love you girls. Let me know if you want to talk more. And like, she's funny about it, but it's fucking lame. Like, I cannot relate. I'm a white woman, but I will say that even as like an older woman, like, I don't want some young guy to like think of me as some like cougar conquest. Like, none of us want to be fetishized in any way. And I know it's not the same. I know it's not comparable. I can't stress that enough. But it's like, while we're talking about the fetishization and the things men say to women, I wanted to bring it up. I know it's like age, it's not race.
I would do it to another person. I can't imagine approaching, I love Indian men, Asian men, Middle Eastern men. Oh, fuck every race. I can't imagine approaching somebody at a bar and being like, but where are you really from? Like, I would never do something like that. I don't need to have experienced it in my life to know that it's wrong. I wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
Throw the whole man out.
We all are people. We're humans. It's crazy to treat us like we're less than human. And I think that's like such the problem with what we see, what happened in Atlanta, and just what American culture has done to Asian women and other women of color as well, that they are like an objectified, ultimately.
Yeah, and Amy Chan will speak to this a little bit today with us, and we're excited to talk to her.
And this was just a line I liked. This was from a woman. She's an Indian woman. She actually came to our Charleston show, and she wrote a story at the end. It just said, TLDR, fetishizing someone for being different leads to a lot of internalized self-hatred and rejection of their own culture and lasting impact on who that person becomes later in life.
I'm glad that you read this, because I was reading an article about this study, and exposure to these experiences may absolutely ferment feelings of shame, humiliation, inferiority, negatively impacting the self-esteem and overall psychological health of racial and ethnic minorities. They said it better than I could. But every one of these things, it slowly chips away at you.
Yeah.
And no matter how strong you are, what kind of support system you have, the things that people say to you inform how you go through life.
Absolutely.
That's not a hot take, but keep it in mind.
Yeah. So like we said, we want to bring awareness to this stuff and maybe it can make some change. I mean, I don't know, like spread the word, tell your friends, tell your fucking brother, tell your guy friends, like, or if you're a guy listening, like know that this is not how you talk to women. And like, if you are leading with this stuff, you have some shit to work on. Like self-reflect and fix it.
Yep.
Because you're making people feel like less than.
Yep. And we're all entitled to make mistakes, but what you should be doing is learning and listening to these stories and do fucking better.
100%. Do better, be better. Okay. So we are going to bring in Amy.
Yes, guys, we are very excited, honored to welcome back a former guest of ours. She was one of your all-time favorite episodes about breakups. She is the founder of Breakup Bootcamp, the writer of the book Breakup Bootcamp. Please welcome back to the show, Amy Chan.
Yay! Hi.
Hi. Our like best friend that the pandemic ruined. We were like trying to get together and then COVID happened. Like we were always like, what you invited us to some event and then we were like, we gotta get drinks with Amy. And then we like went to Australia and then we like came back and it was COVID and then you moved away and you left us. And it's like, when are we going to get this friendship going?
I know.
I mean, we text and we talk, but I'm just like, oh, God.
And you moved away. So you are from Vancouver. You lived in New York and you moved back since we filmed with you, recorded.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm loving it here. It's really nice. So
well, tell us what else is going on.
How's your pandemic been?
So we recorded with you end of 2019 or beginning of 2020? Or
no, we recorded with you in the fall of 2019.
Okay. And so you're in Vancouver, you're still with the same partner. Like just tell us what's been going on in the past year of your life.
Yeah. So I hosted my last physical retreat. And then the pandemic hit and I was in quarantine for 45 days in a 600 square foot apartment with 3 cats. And then, my boyfriend and I decided that let's just leave. And he hadn't even visited Vancouver before. And we packed our bags in 3 weeks. We left and we now have our new home in Vancouver, Canada. It's been really great. And since then, I published my book, Breakup Bootcamp. Yay. I took the retreats online. So I offer virtual retreats and workshops now. And I've just really recalibrated. I used to be in New York and just hustle all the time. And that was my norm. And I got out of it and I was like, whoa, what was I doing? And life is just a lot more peaceful now and slow. And I take my time. So
good. For people who don't know, who are like newer listeners just catching up, can you give us like a quick overview of what Breakup Bootcamp is? And we'll tell people where the episode is, of course.
Yeah. So Breakup Bootcamp, we take a scientific and spiritual approach to healing and rewiring the heart. I bring in 13 experts from psychologists to behavioral scientists to dominatrixes, and we help people after a breakup. But everyone who comes, whether it's a physical retreat or a virtual one, they realize after that's never just about the ex, it's recycled pain. So we really work on the deep subconscious patterns and belief systems that cause people to repeat the same emotional experiences over and over again.
Yeah. And it's completely life-changing again. And if you guys, of course, go back and listen to our episode. If you're listening to this, you probably have already listened. It's literally one of our very top 5 most popular episodes, but, and of course, get your book too. Can't recommend it enough.
Yeah. So you are here today again, because we're doing an episode about Asian Americans and a rise in hate crimes, especially towards women. And Ashley and I both really loved what you wrote. You wrote something really special and meaningful and moving. And we would love to talk to you about what you wrote and your experience and really just give you the floor to talk about growing up as an Asian woman and what that was like.
Yeah. So I wrote a blog about my experience growing up being Asian. And Ashley, I have to say thank you, because if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have put it out there and promoted it, because I kind of hid behind it. I wrote it to kind of get things off my chest and I hid it on my blog. And because of you, it actually caused this ripple effect. And I just shared about my experience growing up because I thought it was normal. I hated being Asian. One of my memories was saving my allowance money and going to the makeup counter and asking the woman, I want white foundation so I look white. And the woman at the counter was like, you can't do that. And I didn't believe her. So I just went on my own. I picked the whitest foundation I could. And I was like, okay, this is my ticket out. out. I could, look Caucasian, and being Chinese would be, my little dirty secret. And that was normal for me. I went to a school where pretty much everyone was white. None of the boys liked the Asian girl. It was very obvious to me that I was, not the same. And, anytime I heard a racist remark, when kids would be super mean and like pull their eyelids into slants and make fun of me, even though my eyes are like super big, I just was like, like what's going on? Like,
right.
Whatever. And it was just a constant shrugging it off. And that's how my culture, it's part of my culture. You don't really say anything, and you really prioritize harmony over conflict or confrontation.
Do you remember like going home after school as a kid and talking to your parents about it and saying like kids aren't being nice to me? And was the message just don't talk about it? Or how did you feel and how did you decide to not talk about it?
I am the daughter of immigrant parents who came from China to Canada. My great-grandparents helped build the railroad. These conversations just weren't a part of our lives. Survival was my parents' priority. And so, there was no woke conversations, and they were always working. So I didn't have my parents around. And so I never felt safe talking to them about anything. I just kind of took it in and was like, this is normal. This is normal.
It's obviously so heartbreaking to hear that you were embarrassed of what you were as a child and wanting to like not be that. But you talked about how it started to feel differently as you became more of a young woman.
Yeah, things changed in the 90s. And suddenly being an Asian woman was trendy and it was cool. And so I've done some research on like what the hell happened, because it was a really drastic difference. And I don't know if it was because some popular television shows started to show Asian women. I know there's a very popular Seinfeld episode where there's like this whole thing about him dating an Asian woman. I don't know if that's a coincidence or if that was kind of part of what started it. But suddenly being an Asian woman was sexy. And I started to get attention from guys. And this was something I struggled with. So I was like, okay, like giddy up. Like I'm going to play into this. And I just morphed my identity again and, really took on this hot Asian girl fantasy. And it was performative. I mean, even sexually, I was performative. And I knew that was going to be validated and accepted. And I also knew that there were certain guys and they were known to only date Asian women. And I know that there's even like this girl, we'll call her Jamie, and she kind of looks like me, some people say, but any guy that has ever liked Jamie would like me and vice versa. And like, this was just something, again, like normalized. I didn't question it. I didn't think that there was anything wrong with it. I just played into it because it gave me a sense of acceptance.
And so how did that sort of like inform the way that you chose men and you chose to date and like looked at yourself?
I think that I would look at the certain guys, there was like certain entrepreneur groups where I was like, oh yeah, that guy, he only dates Asian women. Like there's a target for me. So like I would flirt with them and then, in turn they would like me and like we would date. And this happened over and over again. And obviously to not, never a successful relationship. But that's kind of this thing I did for a couple of years. And, I'm only starting to look at how did these things affect me only now, because for most of my life, I've disassociated from feeling any of these things. I've learned all these coping mechanisms, right? From a child, my coping mechanism was to hide the feelings, to not talk about it, to blend in, don't cause a stir. Then as, a 20-year-old woman to like my later 20s, it was okay, like be in this mold of the sexy person that they want. And I just never stopped to be like, hey, how is this affecting me? Is this helping me? It's only now that I'm starting to unravel that.
Mm-hmm.
Amy, I just can't thank you enough for your honesty and like talking to us about this today. Like, I don't know if it, brings up a lot for you, but I just am so appreciative that you're like sharing this with us. And I just feel like it's going to speak to so many people. I'm sure there are women listening. They're like, that's my story, and it sounds to me like you're unpacking some of it now in real time.
Yeah, it's like being a fish in water and you like, what water, right? I think that's sort of like a really similar experience. And even when I heard about the shootings, I felt all these emotions and I was like, don't cry. Like every time it would come up, I'm like, just, that was just my natural way of being. And when you've behaved with these coping mechanisms for so long, for decades, that becomes a pattern of behavior. So, the day afterwards, and you sent me a text, and I remember I was in my car and I cried when you checked in on me. And it was right after you sent me that text, I went to a coffee shop and I wrote that post.
Oh my God. I'm like not worthy. Like you told me that and I was like, I don't deserve this recognition.
Yeah. And like, it was just a check-in, but for some reason it activated something in me and it made me stop all of the, like, I'm fine, I'm okay. And be like, wait, like, maybe I'm actually not okay. And I've been practicing letting myself feel the feelings. And if I want to cry, like let it out. And I'm still unpacking all of this.
Yeah, I think that probably a lot of people will really relate to your message of, I learned that I can lead with sex and my value was how I looked. And that's how I, showed up to the world. And, on top of that, I was fetishized for it and I picked men because of it. And to unpack that, and listen, there's nothing wrong with that. Like I grew breasts at a very young age. I learned that I could lead with sex and get people to like me as well. It's not the same thing at all, but yeah, I leaned into it and I led with it. And I thought that was my value for a long time as well. And to sort of recalibrate your brain to say like, there's all these things I bring to the table.
Right.
It sort of like jolts you a little bit.
Yeah.
Do you talk to your partner about this kind of thing?
A lot. So my partner is really into politics. And so, before I used to just shy away from all of these things. I'm like, I don't want to read the news. Like it just like, it's not positive. And I'm listening to political podcasts. I'm like, we're having these conversations at the dinner table. I'm looking at different perspectives. And so, it's been really great to have a supportive partner where I feel really safe to talk about these things, to express. And he's my rock.
Mm-hmm. Is he white?
He is half Italian, half something they don't know.
Okay. I hate to ask that question so bluntly, but I think that we had a story from a listener who shared like, if you are a woman of color, I think she said, I'm not saying that you can't be with a white person. Obviously it happens all the time and it works out, but it needs to be someone that understands where you're coming from and what you may deal with that they never have. But they're willing to try to understand and be empathetic and put themselves in your shoes and comfort you and be there for you. So obviously that you have you have healthy relationships. You've written books about it. Like, of course you have a healthy partnership, but I still wanted to, ask.
No, I
make sure that he's doing what he's supposed to do.
And that he's not on notice. Okay.
Amy like confesses, she's like, he actually hasn't been that great. We're like, we'll be there. We will be there.
I wanted to ask you and, take your time thinking about this, but, for other people that are like, okay, well, I have a partner. I might be Asian. I have a partner that's not, I want to talk to them about this stuff, or I want to talk to them about what they might not realize is a big deal, but is a microaggression against me, or even their friends. But if you have like advice for how to talk to your partner about it, I think a lot of people dealt with this over the summer, of course, with Black Lives Matter, and also wanting to educate their partners. So do you have advice for talking to your partner about this kind of stuff?
Yeah. I mean, the way that I've done it is, the news is something which starts as a starting point, right? When the shootings happened, that was a major conversation. And then I went into, okay, this is my experience of it. And I started to share stories. And I think it's really important that we share our stories where before there might've been a lot of shame around it, because that's how we minimize the shame. shame. It's by shining light on these stories and these things that we've kept hidden. And you do that with someone you feel safe with before you're able to go out and do it and share it with the world. So I think that's the very first step is with this person that you trust, talk about what happened, talk about your confusion, ask the questions, and, give them an opportunity to ask you questions. And if they're not asking the right questions, guide them and educate them. And so, and that's with your partners and even with your friends, right? Like I have been a part of the jokes, right? I've participated in them. I've laughed at them. I've made the jokes, right? One Halloween, I went to this Halloween party, which was hosted by these guys that are known to have like Asian fever. And I dressed up in a cheongsam, a traditional Chinese dress with a doctor's kit and a sign that I was curing yellow fever, right?
Oh my God.
That was super funny. Yeah. Because, the hate, it doesn't start off as hate per se. I don't think it starts off, I think that hate simmers until it explodes. And it starts with that seemingly harmless joke, the othering the other person, the objectifying the other person. And there are these, hundreds or thousands of slights that add up. And so I think that part of this is educating people, because I don't think that most people are evil and have bad intentions and they want to hurt you. I think a lot of people aren't informed. They're not educated. They're not having these conversations. I know growing up, I didn't have any conversations about racism or sexism. And so part of this is when someone is saying a joke or saying something that is inappropriate and you feel it, there's that moment where you're like, nah, but then you're like, okay, I'll just giggle. At least I know for me. And then just ask like, hey, like, do you think that's appropriate? And what makes you think it's appropriate? Like ask with curiosity. But when you go and you're like, oh my God, like, why'd you say that? You're such an idiot. Like, I don't know if that is going to have as much as an impact than asking with curiosity and compassion and being like, hey, I'm curious, and opening up that dialogue so that people can start to be like, oh, wait, I didn't know that has that impact. Okay. I think that's where it starts.
For sure. And I wanted to get back to the dating and the fetishizing we've talked a lot about on this episode and ask you if you feel like there are signs of it. And, because I think there's a world in which there could be a man, for example, and he has a few ex-girlfriends that are all Asian. And that doesn't necessarily mean that he has a fetish. That could be that it's coincidence, where you live matters, demographics, and just in general gravitating towards a certain type of look, like we all do. You can line up a lot of guys that Rayna and I have both dated that looked similar. So I just wanted to hear from you. Did you ever pick up on things that made you feel that it was more of a fetishization than a preference of attractiveness?
I would say that you could, like for me, I could feel it, that something was a little off. So it's almost like that sense of conquesting. So when someone's conquesting, they have an idea of what maybe it is, they want a wife or they want a husband, whatever it is. And they're like, oh, Zoom, you fit in. They're not dealing with you as a human being. They're dealing with you as an object and a means to an end. Like, I will fit you here. And in my experience of being fetishized, I could feel it. Like someone was like, oh my gosh, like they have a thing for Asian women and it's super sexy and like you. And there's no like wanting to know my soul or my brain or like any of that stuff. So yeah, I think that I don't know what are the red flags, telltale signs, but I think that for me, I could feel something. And then I also played into some of it too, where I was like, oh, okay, well, that's the way that, I'm going to get this guy to like me. Okay, cool. Like I'm game. And now like I'm in a healthy partnership. Like, I just don't feel any of that shit. It's it's not there.
You just know it when you see it, right? There's just things you can't necessarily make a laundry list of it. It's just, I can feel it. Right. I can feel that I've been slotted in here and anybody else could be slotted in here. And I think it's just important to acknowledge it, think about how do these things affect me and move forward.
Yeah.
Well, anything else, Amy, that you wanted to talk about today? Like we're just so honored that you took the time and talked about the stuff you wrote and how you've been feeling.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this quote a lot. It's privilege is when you think something is not a problem because it's not a problem to you personally. And it's just been a really great quote to really shift perspective and make you think about these things. Because even before, when I was hearing some of the people speak up about racism, like, oh, like I don't face it. I'm in Vancouver, like half the population here is Asian. No, it's not a problem. But like I've been using this kind of as a filter in all of these different issues that are being brought to light right now. And I think that could be helpful for people. I think that what you guys are doing is great, like providing a platform. And so for others, if you don't have a platform, I think like enabling and opening space for people to share their stories is really important. And even however you're going to signal to other people, Asians, so that they feel safe with you, that they're emotionally safe to talk to you about these things. I think that's a really helpful thing that you can do. And educate when you hear those jokes. Instead of just giggling or like staying silent, say something.
I love that you said that. And I think that that'll be like the perfect litmus test for everybody, which is, just because I don't think it's an issue doesn't mean.
I think about that all the time. You see that. I saw that so much more when I lived in Atlanta and I lived in the South, and just people, it's because they refuse to recognize it. They don't want to see it. And so it's this like, I don't know. I've never experienced that. It's like, did you ever stop to think that your experience is not the experience of everyone else, especially if you're a white person? Like, hold me back from my keyboard. You know what I mean? And that's
just because you didn't grow up in that scenario where you realized it was a problem somewhere, it doesn't mean you're a bad person. You're a bad person if you don't want to learn and educate and grow from there now. I talked about earlier in the episode, I didn't know anti-Semitism was a problem. I just didn't. I mean, I knew about the Holocaust. I didn't grow up in an environment where people hated Jews. And so to just be the kind of person that opens up your eyes and wants to learn from other people is really important.
Yeah. Well, Amy, we thank you so much. I hope you continue to talk about this stuff. I just think, you're a beautiful writer, speaker, person in general, and our audience loves you. It's obviously one reason why I wanted to bring you back today. So
we'll tell people where they can find your work, your book, your retreats, your Instagram, everything.
Yeah. So renewbreakupbootcamp.com is my website. I'm on Instagram at Miss Amy Chan, and my book, Breakup Bootcamp, The Science of Rewiring Your Heart, is at all bookstores, and write me a review on Amazon.
Well, thank you for being here.
Amy.
We just love you so much. Thank you for all of your words and everything you did.
Thank you. This was fun.
And you know where to find us, girlsgottaeatpodcast.com, at Girls Gotta Eat Podcast on Instagram, Rayna.Greenberg, Ash Hess on Instagram, girls_gotta eat on Twitter, and youtube.com/Girls Gotta Eat. Tickets for those Florida shows at girlsgottaeatpodcast.com. So scoop up on them before they're gone. And we'll see you next week.
Thanks, guys. Have a good week.
Bye.